Well, welcome to the Neufeld Institute's panel on parenting in a pandemic. This is actually the last of our panels of a series of six. I'm going to miss it. I, I actually quite enjoy working with these two brilliant minds and responding to the questions. The Neufeld Institute, if you're new to watching this, is about applying developmental science to raising children, parenting them, and teaching them. And of course, the concern was this can be a challenge at any time, but when we try to do this in the middle of a pandemic, the challenges can certainly increase and compound. I'm Gordon Neufeld. Joining me and to help answer your questions are two of our Neufeld Institute faculty, Dr. Deborah McNamara, is author of Rest, Play, Grow, Making Sense of Preschoolers, as well as the children's book, The Sorry Plane. And she is joining us from her home in Vancouver. And Tamara Strijack is our academic dean and the co-author of Reclaiming Our Students, which is about emotional health in schools. And she's joining us from her home in Cowichan Valley on Vancouver Island. So we're here to take questions again. And I understand that we have a number of questions this time from our frontline workers as well.
Yes, this is a session. We're taking this final session to give a priority to those on the front line, essential workers. And on that same note, we will be taking, we have several questions around returning to school. So those are our main themes for today. We're going to start off with a question, so that we have a few questions from nurses. And one is from a nurse who is, as she says, she's often in contact with people who have COVID-19. I do have all the appropriate protective equipment, but I still worry about bringing this virus home to my family. Some of my colleagues have gone to the extremes of moving out of their houses to protect their families. Most of us are just extremely diligent with showering immediately and cleaning surfaces frequently, and less kissing and cuddling. My kids 9 and 12 are old enough to understand that I may actually present a risk to them, and that I'm behaving in a manner that supports that I am at a risk. Mm. How do I maintain my role in the family as a safe and available parent when there is a sense of danger about me?
Well, I put myself in that situation a number of times, and there's no easy answers to that at all. I don't know how one wouldn't be worried. I think one have to be awfully emotionally defended not to be worried. I think that's just part of it. And the fact that you are taking some agency in it and making your own decision and weighing the risk, I think is what needs to happen. We can't just blindly follow certain things. We need to make decisions that makes the most sense in the context of our own family. And it's an issue of risk management, yes, but the safety that your children have is that the safety in knowing that you are in charge and you're making decisions, and that's important to them. If they didn't feel you being in control of that, that would be a concern. And of course, it's an emotional safety. I mean, it's just the way it is. One of the wonderful things about it is that children feel safer when they're around us, when there's a trusting relationship with them. So it's not so much something you have to do. And as far as the physical danger, I don't think that is primarily the issue. It was an incredible thing. There was a study that I came on not too long ago of the fact of the children in the bombing raids in London when they were in the shelters with their parents. And the parents were usually intuitive enough also to be playing some games with them, because you can't really talk about what's going on. You hear all of this bombing behind you. And I don't know how this happened, but they were doing some testing of these children at the same time, and these tests have survived. And compared to the tests of nowadays, that children actually feel more alarmed. And I was trying to think of, well, what was the key here? And the key was, well, they were with their parents. They were with their parents, and the parents were intuitive enough to play some games with them. And when you play, you're in this bubble of safety. And I think, you as a parent, you as a nurse are so acutely aware of the risks. You're living it and in this, I, but the good news is that our children, when they're with us, are not as aware. And I don't know if you have to answer the questions directly enough for your older children. I realize that they want to make sure, they may be concerned that that there is a risk there. It's more just not losing your place as uh, um, as the one who is making that you're taking them into consideration, you're making the decisions that you believe are in the best interest all the way around, and and in leaning on the fact that their relationship with you will give them the safety they need to have.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm thinking too about all the alarm that your children may have, and that where would they put that? If you can't necessarily speak this out loud, it would be very difficult, I would think, to look at this head on. And so, how do you provide some sideways momentum through play that has some alarm in it, maybe some frustration, to help your children with the emotions that are there that might be difficult to speak or to share? And that might be part of your leadership is providing some emotional playgrounds where play can take on an element of alarm, and if you have someone there that's supporting you, how can they be to facilitate that so that your children can find some rest in that alarm? And the other point I would make is that when I've been in those situations with my kids, thinking about traveling under situations where there's been terrorism quite prevalent and in your face, I was quite taken aback about how blind my children were to the things that are or were could be alarming. And it was only when we really got home and we were out of danger that my children started to process a lot of it through play and started to talk about their dolls having camouflage clothes on and carrying guns. And I realized, oh, I think we're processing our trip to Italy.
Uh,
And and so it was fascinating to me how play took care of so many of those emotions. They did feel safe in my care, and there was a sideways look at it through play that enabled us to process what needs to be processed. So I'm just in awe of the brain to take care of some of this for
yeah.
us as well.
Well, playing monster games and fun, the
Hmm.
chase games and the monster games, if the children can do this, where there's alarm in play, both gives expression to the alarm that is there and renders it rather innocuous because it doesn't count. So
Hmm.
it does have that effect of being able to work that out of our system. It's too bad that we couldn't do that more as adults, is
Hmm.
be able to have these chase games. My grandchildren just love that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's what comes to mind for me is that we're losing those places right now for some of that to come out naturally.
Mm.
Because as the alarm gets higher, we feel like everything feels serious. Everything feels and it may be very serious, but we need those times for things to start moving because we can get stuck in that place. And a couple of the related questions that came in here, around children who are particularly maybe sensitive, finding it a bit overwhelming. And I'll give you one example here and speak to elevated frustration for one child. This is a shift worker who works at the local hospital, and husband is working at home. They're trying to support their children with online learning. So they have a daughter who speaks quite openly about her fears and worries and is more easily comforted. But the son is particularly sensitive, gets tantrums when he's frustrated, and runs and hides when he's frustrated. And she says, I used to be able to comfort my son through frustration. He would let me help him with schoolwork. But since this pandemic caused lockdown, my son has become more frustrated, won't let me help him or comfort him, and most often pushes me away when he is upset or mad about anything. And so just dealing with that kind of resistance in a child where it's just been too much.
Mm.
Well, such a perfect emotional storm, everything together. How do you even tease apart which root comes from what? You know, what part of this is alarm from watching your parent be on the front line and worrying about that, or all the changes in routine? There's so much separation around this child, and where you used to be able to move in and be the answer to that. It's so difficult now because the emotion is so high, so elevated. And so to me, the answer would be to try to draw out some of that frustration that would make it easier to get close to him. You know, how could we draw that out ahead of the tantrums, ahead of this, knowing that he's full of foul frustration? How do we make room for that before it turns really foul, and take the lead on it, so that we can soften him? And the answer to that would be, of course, frustration based play would be wonderful. Finding some way to fix, destroy, break, grow, change, reassemble, something that represents change, given that frustration is the emotion of change, wants to reconfigure, control, or do something here. How do we give them a bit of a sense of that? Because, you are the answer to this child, but his emotion just makes it hard to get close with it. And so how do we reduce it when we can't control all the factors that are stirring it up? You have such limited control over some of these things here.
Some thoughts that came to me on that. It's a difficult one, and it's very hard when you can't provide the comfort that you need, and when your child is running away from you instead of to you. That's very difficult. And it's also, I think, his flight from his own vulnerability, from his own upset, from his own alarm is at a place that I don't think he probably is in control of it. And so I think the first step, to me, rather than being more direct or too direct, would be, first of all, to trust in the relationship. It is a safety net, and that is the most important thing here. Not even so much that he is able to process his emotions or face things right now, but that it doesn't do harm on the relationship. And so somehow he needs to know from you that it's okay. We all go through times when we want to run away. A kind of a throwaway statement that, you didn't want to think about it right then. Always put it situational, as you didn't want to think about it right then. We'll take some time before, you want to talk about this. That's okay. I understand. But giving some permission for the flight inside of him, and just when you can, really, really not speak, act more to the relationship. Just, when he is receptive, taking advantage of it, but not trying to get him to open up at this point. It's more that he would feel safe with you, that it's not taking him to a place that he is running away from inside. And so if you can both acknowledge that it don't feel like looking at this or talking about this right now, or when you get scared, you just want to run away, but acknowledging that, so you put it inside the relationship rather than it's outside. The worst thing is that he can sense your disapproval of that. And of course, that's not what you wish for him, but if it goes outside of the relationship, and it increases the alarm. So it's almost like you're taking a step way back and saying, okay, this is the reality right now. But the good thing is we have this relationship, and so I'm going to make some noises that throw what is happening inside the relationship so that he knows that it's not in danger, and well, at the same time, not putting pressure on to go there, at least not directly. And shoring up that relationship, because there'll be better days. It will come down, there you'll be able to find your way through that maze. Your yearning is right to be his comfort, to be this, to be the answer for him. And so it's all there, and he'll need you. And the other thing that comes to mind is again, and we've talked about this before in terms of other answers or other questions, is that is that when somebody is skittish like this, very sensitive, and it becomes more than he can bear, is just of finding an easy way into emotional playgrounds, into a music or a story. And again, not being direct about it at all. In fact, if you were direct about it, it would ruin the place because he knew you were up to something. But just making it a time, because when you're truly at play and at rest, the feelings come back on their own in spite of ourselves. And so it's not even working at them directly, just giving them that place with you. I think he needs to feel safe with you. Ironically enough, he needs to feel safe enough with you to run away. I mean, safe enough to be able to be in his flight from feeling without him taking away from you. And that would be my sense of it, is to go back, it's not ideal. It's not, of course, what we want. Some of us males are like that, and some of us sensitive males are like that even more. Uh, um, and uh, and just giving it some slack, and knowing that this doesn't not going for the direct approach, but knowing that this isn't at all threatening his relationship with you. Um, it'd be nice for both of you, I think, if you could relax into it a little bit, and know that it will come around. It will come around. You'll figure it out, and there will be a place of safety where he starts thawing out.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would kind of add in, or just that I was thinking about as you were saying that, was just this idea of the non-directness of it, but even more so of not in the moment. And I think so often we're tempted to go at it in the moment when they're tantruming, to start helping them find an appropriate outlet, when that's not the time. That's just when it's just too loaded. And so as a relationship, when there's times of connection, it's actually building in intentional outlets at that time, stories or music or singing, or something that would help facilitate something, or some of the things that Deborah was talking about, all the destroying things, or playing Jenga or something, where then you can pull the thing out and everything gets destroyed, but not doing it when the frustration is too high, because it will go over the top. So it's like getting some of that release valve, so you get the release out a little bit, so that energy, that emotional energy, has a chance to drain a bit, so that they can actually get closer to the real feelings. Because my sense is that underneath that frustration is so much alarm, is so much fear. Talk about that, facing that separation. It's we can't touch that. We can't go there. And so, yeah, so that finding those ways to just release it a little bit. And so that when that emotion does run high, it doesn't go over the top the same way, or isn't displaced quite as intensely. Yeah.
It reminds me of a couple of clients with very, very, very sensitive children, and found, and you might try this as well, and just try to see, just casually singing about the day, and this happens, and he didn't feel very good about that. It ran, and da 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 da. No, and it's a talk.
Yeah.
The thing about about the parents being a bit silly and in the play mood is so engaging for children, right? But the message they get too is that something can be talked about one step removed, and it's okay. It's worked for numbers of sensitive. In this case, they've all been boys, so I don't know if it's something about us males, or just I don't know what it is, but if it doesn't work, you leave it alone. But it might be something you want to try.
I want a recording of that song. That's the problem, though. You can't record it because it has to be their experiences.
Specific.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more question that's more related to before we turn to the schools, because I know there's some questions too coming in directly here about that as well. This one has to do with the, again, back to it's a nurse working very erratic hours, different shifts, different times, and is trying to co-parent a 2-year-old. And her daughter's father is worried about infecting their child, and it's hard, of course she sees this could be a possibility, so it's hard to argue that, but trying to figure out how you do this, because if she has a short visit, it's like it's before or after work, there's too much intensity and it's too much, and he has tantrums. Therefore, she stops seeing him until she can have him for a whole day to allow them time to have emotion, I guess, is part of it. But right now, that's only every 2 weeks, and just not sure how to handle that, because not wanting to disrupt with the short visit, but having that much time apart is hard. And so how to balance the seemingly impossible task of how do you, again, back to that question that keeps coming up, is how do we keep close when apart, and how do we keep our children safe but also be connected at the same time?
Is a 2-year-old verbal, like any indication? Is it a toddler?
It didn't say young or old toddler, so I'm guessing it's about the age when they might start speaking.
Yeah.
But
That's a difficult thing. There's all kinds of concerns and alarms. The father is alarmed and concerned. It puts a lot of pressure on, and so the key is to find something that kind of takes the alarm down and works for everyone. Is to find a time of togetherness, just to walk it around so the child looks forward to it in a way. And the first thing that comes to me, I'd be interested in Deborah's response, because she's just put so much thinking in the toddler and preschool age. But the thing that would come to me, if I was a grandparent in the situation, or the parent and so on, is even just arranging a time through Skype or Zoom or whatever it is, when you're reading to a person who's reading a book that your co-parent, they're sitting on their knee and reading together. So it's a time of togetherness where you have this, but everybody is safe, and it's a bit of a playtime, and it's a connection. Again, this isn't going to be forever, and you've got the relationship. The relationship will take care. The child will grow deeper in the relationship. It's finding a way to walk this through. And right now, walking this through is like, it doesn't have to be the way it always will be. And it's a matter of having a connecting time and being able to point to the next time, always the next time of connection. But if it's a time that they're looking forward to in some way, it doesn't even need to be physical. It can be a song that you sing to them, a lullaby that you've made up for them. And so they're singing, and you're rocking and singing that lullaby. And it's just 2 minutes on this, and then you'll have another one for them the next time. It's finding that place that can just walk this through. And it's these touch points that provide the sense of connection, that you're there, it's all okay. It's when we don't have those, like the worst case scenario, or not a worst case, but it wouldn't be so good in my mind if you said, well, this is too difficult and I'll just leave it to once every 2 weeks. That's really hard for a 2-year-old. Like, did I get the right age right? The toddler there. It's really hard for a toddler. I'd rather keep it to, at the most, to every other day at the most, and have it a real short time where you connect and you do something that is just a connection. Hears your voice in a friendly way and gets a sense of your face and can fill this up, and you can give the hug, there, and kiss this. You're allowed to kiss your screens, I think. This is what forever our grandchildren would do, is hug the screen and kiss them, when we were away. But something like this that just walks it through, knowing that you'll get a chance to come back to your mothering. There's lots to do, but it now is just kind of like you're treading water, right? And the most important thing is to preserve the connection, and you don't have to make headway. You just preserve the connection. That's all you need to do. And to do something that in which you feel a bit playful, and you feel you can do, and that where the alarm comes down a bit would be a whole lot better than trying to have a meaningful face-to-face or live encounter rather with a 2-year-old that is going to be often, they'll be resistant for the first while, like just nothing works well when you just pop into it. Okay, you've got half an hour and the pressure is there and it doesn't work so well, for a toddler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. There's so little. They have so few ways to hold on if it's not physical. It's just all about being like you and being, the same as you, which I think certainly with two, to try to exploit that as much as possible and to
Mm-hmm.
focus on
Yes.
sameness and to really put the connection on the sameness. And I'm doing this and we do this and I've got the same color eyes and we both like, purple and, you're wearing your blue shirt. Mommy's got her blue shirt on
Mhm.
today. And
Yeah.
just every day trying to find a couple of things where you can be the same as the child and to point that out, is to think about how many connection points. And I'd be really and you're a nurse, so you're great at like the whole, routine and ritual and checkpoints and lists and stuff. I would imagine being a nurse, you've got to pay a lot of attention to that. And I would kind of treat it the same way with your little preschooler in the sense of I've got to have certain check-ins and a protocol here so that this child has a sense that I'm with them. And a lot of the focus being on the same. So, how could you give 3 checkpoints
Mm.
during the day of being the same as? How could you use the father to facilitate a sense of connection with you and to send your special sleeping pillow over there and a special little picture of mommy and, get matching teddy bears with one being a bigger teddy bear and she has a little teddy bear and your big teddy bear gives a little teddy bear kiss. I'm going to take this with me and, or give her the big teddy bear to take care of her little teddy bear for the day and talk about the teddy bears and how the teddy bears are feeling and rather than directly about you and your relationship. But just find some ways to embody your relationship and have the father bring your relationship into the home in a psychological way and to be the answer here to you, to that connection and to keep you in mind, and to also make room, if possible, for some of the frustration that will be there. And I miss mommy. And can daddy make some room for that? Can we help daddy find some ways that this isn't a mistake, that she's so full of missing? In fact, it's going to be better for daddy if he can draw off some of
Mhm.
the frustration. And, can he facilitate a picture every day for mommy or some sort of, little box that we put all our pictures in and we save them up for a week and then we bring them to mommy as a mommy present. And I remember when my nephews were missing their father when he'd work for a week out of town and then he'd come back in, and my sister would facilitate so many beautiful ways, from wearing a t-shirt to his smells to the pillow to the connection point during the day. And then when he would finally come home at the end of the week, they would have a big celebration and they'd have a menu ready. The boys would put a menu and they put it in the mailbox. So daddy would have to go to the mailbox and get the menu so they could have their meal together. And that was the entry into the
Mhm.
relationship, because all this missing needed to have a place to go instead of just this huge clingy pursuit and overwhelming their father. They created this beautiful menu to welcome the dad, and it just rolled out so much better, all of this missing, when they could put it into some play and some tangible things that could represent and facilitate the emotional connection. But yeah, it's hard. It's going to be hard on both ends. The person who is taking care of your child has to have a relationship with your child's feelings, that they are going to be upset. We don't want those feelings to go missing. A 2-year-old needs to have those emotions. We don't want them to go missing. If they can make some room for that and draw the steam off with some really good connection protocol every day. Okay, where's my way stations? Here it is, and I got to connect here. And I even had a dad once who did like a big treasure map for the day, and they got a little piece of the treasure and they find throughout the day, and at the end of the day, they'd have a little piece of treasure, which was usually like a picture he drew or something, and little clues throughout the day. These are just ways to keep, fun ways, delightful ways, playful ways that takes the edge off of the sadness there. And it's also good for you, because you're going to feel like you're holding on. For this mom will feel like she's holding
Mhm.
on to her daughter, that she's an agent in this. You're not passive. There's a lot that you can do to hold on to your child.
Yeah. Yeah, it requires some creativity. you know, and that's the thing. And all of this, it requires some creativity. Is how do we, when we see what's needed though, then we can be creative with how we keep those
Yeah.
connections. And, you know, I found just the voice was so important for my own daughter. Whenever I was away, it was the sound of my voice or the smell of my pajamas. She would always need to have my nightshirt with her, and I had to make sure I didn't wash it, you know, because at that age, that's how they feel close, you know,
It is
that's
a
it.
connection.
And
The connection is the
and
bottom line, is
yeah,
to feel it, sense it.
yeah, the
And
sense is
yeah, and that's so going back to another thing in terms of the connection. If you do have a cradle song, if you do have a lullaby, if you did have one, this would be the time to sing it when you do. Like, make it a time when you sing this. If not, it's never too late to make one up. There is something about this that really creates this very, very deep kind of connection, and also allows for the sweet sadness that enables the letting go until the next time. So that's the lullaby has been the thing that we have used for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, to be able to deal with separation, not just the nighttime, but all separation. And so that's an idea as well.
I want to shift. I know there's a lot of questions coming in about returning to school, so I'm just going to shift direction now. To a lot of children with elevated anxiety. So we're talking about elevated anxiety with the parents and with the separation, but now we've got more anxiety. Some children who have been actually faring quite well at home, where the alarm is lower for some, and now facing potentially returning to school, at least in some form. And with some of the measures in place, with having to wear masks, with the teachers having to wear masks, or having to still maintain the social distance for young children, it's so hard to understand. And so there's some questions. There's some questions from parents around that anxiety in their own children. But I also have a question, and maybe we'll start with this question from a teacher who says, "What can I do in the classroom to help the students feel safe when they return to school?"
Well, the thing to guard against is with children is trying to deal with it cognitively or rationally, or to explain what the danger is, because this exacerbates it. It's not always the trick. Whenever there is something that's really of concern, be it there's a kidnapper, be it something bad could happen, be it an atrocity, be it a shooter, be it earthquake, all of these things, is that the challenge is to find these scripts, the things to do, and the more playful you can about doing them, you know, who can find their spots to stand first, and and you find it the way, and oh, we got to keep this, the noodle apart here, and or thinking of the pool noodle or whatever it is. But the more the scripts are there, uh, it's our job as adults to worry about things. It's not it's it's not their job. It's our job to figure out how we can script their life so that they are less in danger, and so they won't endanger others. And that's part of the script. Play makes it fun and engaging and gives a sense of safety. So will we get it right all the time? No, but they really need to know that you're more in charge than you're not. Because if you're not in charge, if you convey that you feel helpless, or you convey that you don't know what you're doing, or nobody gave you something, if you convey that, or that this is too much to handle, then they're going to go berserk, because they just, and so you just bluff it, because nobody knows in this sense, and nobody knows, we're treating everybody as infected, and that produces an alarm that goes over the top. How do you do this? This isn't this we don't off this is not how we function. So the best you can do is do scripts, make it playful, stay in a sense of charge, and just bluff that way. Don't show your fear, and it's a sense, we'll get through this, we'll figure it out, this and so on. And you give that presence about yourself, and you make whatever you have to do as playful as possible. And they're just procedures, they're just scripts, they're protocols. And it's a matter of figuring this out. And if you figure a little bit each day, if, we need a procedure for that, a protocol for that. And if it's playful, we can make headway in this. But the basic thing is the direct approach doesn't work with alarm. You don't sit down, you don't talk about what it is and why we need to be cautious. It's not about that. It's just these are the rules right now. Tomorrow we'll change them. It's a funny thing. We've got rules that we can, we'll look at them. We'll change a few. It's fun. We're playing with rules. These are the rules today, and so on. And next week, and it's just a bunch of rules. And as playful you can make them, the better.
Maybe they should sing the rules.
Yeah, that would even be better.
Well,
It would even be better,
The rules
And
might
let's
change in a
see
minute.
if we can get our masks on without, and when we
Oh.
do this and when we do that.
Don't
That's
touch
exactly
them.
it, because it's engaging, right? And it makes everybody feel safe. And yeah.
Well, I was thinking how some children actually were, there are some kids who show up at school, and I think especially for some of the sensitive ones, thinking about my kids, and the more structure and routine there is, the more clarity there is about where you should be and your belongings
Mhm.
should be, and they actually feel more secure because
Yeah,
there's less ambiguity.
that's right.
The kids with more counter will and free
Yeah.
spirits this way, they're like, oh, they're going to be like, I don't like this at all. And so then you're going to have a little bit more play in
Yeah.
there. But I think one of the things that teachers do really well is that, they're outnumbered by kids, and they know that they've got to have their routine, they got to have a structure, they got to have a flow of the day. And I think that carries you when you're inside those rituals
Mm.
that they come to know about school. When you're inside those rituals, there's something that carries you, that you feel safe in what you know about this environment. Like, okay, here's the plan for the day, and circle time or whatever it is that you do, math time, and just rolling with the best of what school has to offer, which is routine, ritual, structure.
Mhm.
I think will
Right.
help carry your emotions and say, okay, I'm at home here. This feels normal because this
Mm.
is what I've missed. That there's some certainty in those things that haven't changed. And so, and to take, I guess, to have faith in that those things are already there to help you as a teacher. It's not just you alone creating that sense of safety. It's your structure, it's your routine, it's your classroom, it's the familiarity. It's all of those things that help create this invisible matrix around a child that says, the world has got you, and there's some order and certainty. But there might be a little bit too much order for some of those little ones that come back.
Yeah, that's right.
That's for sure.
That's why there has to be a bit of fun in it, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you could have fun, like, okay, if you're in a box, how would be the 100 ways that you can break out of a box if all you have is a rope, a stapler, and how would you, and you have to kind of play with that sense of being trapped, because I think, if some schools have taken away music, some don't have the same classroom maneuverability and being outside and all of the things that would help, give you a sense of freedom. There's that I think is going to be a challenge for some of our kids.
Yes.
Yeah, and it seems to me that's where the connection as a teacher, that's going to be the most important piece, is that the child feels connected, they feel collected each day. Even more important to be able to get that come alongside, and it just goes so far into that child feeling safe with you, as we were talking about earlier, about how the parent relationship, that is where they feel safe in that, because they are with you. So if they are connected with you, if they are looking to you,
Yes.
then there will be, then that alarm can come
Yeah.
down. And making that playfulness too, it can be so important. Get some fun masks, get some fun material. I mean, there's all kinds of fun ones I've seen out there. If you got to wear it, at least flaunt it, have some,
Yeah.
comics or
Or
something.
have them draw mustaches
Yeah, or
underneath,
something. Yeah.
and
Just wear
so
a
on,
hockey mask.
hiding it. I think that's the basic. The basic thing is when we're playful, we're not afraid. When there's an adult around you that acts as if they're in charge, even though they're not, if they act as if they're in charge, we feel safe. Even as adults, we do. Like well, that's somebody knows what they're doing. The thing is, it's not rational. It's not a cognitive issue. It's an emotional issue.
Yeah.
Once you realize that, you don't have to address all the questions. Somebody said, well, what about this? What about this? We're having a hard time with some worries today, and you just acknowledge it and so on. And, but you don't have to answer the question. Um, to answer the question is pushes you in a place where you don't want to lie, but if you're honest, it is a source of alarm. So it's best just take the lead, and distract with something playful.
Yeah, well, and I think if we take now from the other side, we've got a lot of questions coming in, both here in the Q&A and in the questions that were submitted, with parents with children who are already very anxious. They've already got challenges, and now it's just gone through the roof because now they're afraid to touch anything. Now they're the sight of someone in a mask will send them over the top. And so there's that piece of that of how do we bring their alarm down, which is some of the things we've just been talking about from the other angle. But want to bring in another concern, another question that came in more specifically was wondering, do I keep the child home? There's a possibility I'm working from home. I could keep him home, but is it better for him that I put him in the situation so that he can learn how to handle that he's going to have to learn how to handle these situations? Is this the time where I allow him to go through? This was a question from a woman in Israel. And I'm sure is very common to a lot of people wondering, it may feel like catering if you say, well, the child is too alarmed to go to school. So that question of, if we have it in our control, is it helpful to put them in those situations, or is it helpful to keep them home?
Well, I think the main thing to realize is as much as it's a good thing that you have choices as a parent.
Yeah.
It's a good thing in countries where parenting is honored. Unfortunately, in some countries, parenting is not honored. But so simply to be able to make your choice is a very good thing. It's an important thing. And to feel conflicted when you make that choice is important because there's arguments on both sides. And in the end, you want to make a choice that you believe is in the best interest. So you have to weigh these things. I wouldn't put so much weight on that a child has to get used to these things and learn things. If it's really working at home and the child feels safe there, and it doesn't seem to you to be necessary to do this, it's important to have your own reasons for things, to think through them and make sure that they make sense to you, because it's your child. It's your child, and you're their best bet. Whatever reason you make, is that you believe is in the best interest of the child is better than you doing something because you're letting somebody else make those decisions for you. And so I would say just it's not easy being a parent, but oh my goodness, I'm so glad that in most of our countries, at least that are participating here, we have the freedom to make the decisions that we believe are in the best interest of our children. But those decisions won't be easy. But the relationship with you is first. The sense of if things seem to be working at home, and for some children, they will just thrive in that situation. They will thrive, and I wouldn't have any problem with going with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other thing that comes to mind is just, when you're that highly alarmed at home and contemplating going to school, you'd have to have some sort of assurance that a child's alarm would come down in a school environment for them to be able to learn, because alarm hijacks your attention.
Yes,
So
it does.
what does this exercise become about? It becomes torture for you and for your child. Now, some parents don't have that choice. And we have to find our way through that and to lead our children into hard things. But this isn't your situation. And so it's more of a cognitive exercise in terms of, does this benefit of him, him? Is he going to be left out of something if I don't send him when other children are going and there is learning to be done? But what learning is done when you're so highly alarmed? Like, the learning agenda to me just is not so important as the developmental one, which is, is he able to feel confident and secure in the relationships he has so that he can, leave home and feel confident about where he's going and that he'll be cared for. Maybe he'll have some alarm still, but not anything that's going to hijack to the degree that it is. Maybe he needs some time to play if this is a younger child, then some time to play to fortify his sense of self and autonomy and to find his reasons. He'll learn lots and play under your
Yes.
care, So I'm just not a fan of pushing stuff. I just think that we feel a lot of pressure as parents, especially around academics, and it is not well founded when you look at the developmental science. It's just too much, too fast, too hard, and we need to stop comparing ourselves with what other people are doing, and not to be afraid to make the decisions that we think are in our best interest of our children. That will look different from other people, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
okay. And the one thing just to add to it quickly is it's important in this not to give a child the lead in this, because it's important for the parent to own the decision. These kinds of things, we read the needs of the child, but don't put them in the lead in terms of making these decisions. There are decisions to make in the best interest, and even when we make mistakes, it's better that we make those mistakes. Again, it's a relationship. We won't do everything right. It's a relationship that's important, and a relationship in the end, which will give the context for the child to develop.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I echo all of those things. And I want to bring in here now one of the questions around the child who becoming worried about everything and kind of, with that shyness, it feels like everything's over the top. And I feel like there's that balance, because we don't want to put them in situations that are going to be so alarming that their defenses are going to come up and they won't be able to take anything in. It will just further the alarm. It will further the cycle. And yet we want to find those opportunities where we can start to build that resilience. But in order to do that, it has to feel safe enough.
Mm-hmm.
This is where play is magical, because
Yes.
when we can take it into some of those places, it reminds me of the story of one of our faculty in Israel, Alana, who described the story of her son who had this phobia of cracks. It's quite classical, not stepping on the cracks. And he would have to do this dance, right? This period of steps. And so she just kind of was watching this, and instead of going at it directly and saying, oh, we got to learn not to do that, that's not appropriate behavior, she started just sort of playing. She turned it into a game, and she did the dances and the steps with him. And it became this thing that they kind of made into a game. And then all of a sudden she said, it just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't there anymore. And it's that idea of, yes, we need to find some of those places where we can help them convince their brain that, yes, we can do this, we can handle this. But on the other hand, we don't want it to be so much that it just shuts them down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's reading the difference. And so bringing back to what you were talking about, when you've got a child, you've got to read that as a parent. In this situation, will this be too much, or will this be something that will actually, that they can see, yes, I can handle this.
Yeah.
And sometimes you won't. I was just say, sometimes you don't know, and that's to your point, Gordon, is that you don't know, and parents will say, well, what do I do? Well, I don't know. You're going to have to take a step one way or the other.
Yeah.
And then if you disagree with it, then tell the child that you disagree, and you know what, you're done. You only needed 2 days of school, and then you're done. I thought it might be longer. I thought you might be there for a month, but I've decided that you're done in 2 days. Happy graduation. And you just take the lead, and you say, without revealing that you blew it, and just say, actually, you know what? I think you're ready to go now. I think we're ready for a little bit or a half a day or whatever. And you take a foot forward and you look to see whether or not it was, you assess once you take a step forward.
And they feel that strength when they feel you in charge. And that's the main thing. What gives them a sense of safety is when when it when they can lean upon you, when you are their answer in terms of care and so on. And the more they do that, the more it's answered emotionally. And then with the play, oh my goodness, as alarmed as they are, if you can bring it into a fun game, a monster chasing, whatever it is, and they get as alarmed as they are in play, it doesn't count. The brain goes, oh, I guess it wasn't a big deal anyway. We're as alarmed as we are, and it's all in fun. And it is the best thing to be able to get that, bring that alarm down. So it's more able to work in everyday life.
Just want to add in, we just have time just for one little angle on this, and just to close, but what about helping parents with their own anxiety? This is a question that just came in. I have so many parents who can't calm their own child because they are so stressed and worried. And I imagine it's pretty hard to find your playfulness when you're in that place.
Oh, yeah.
So that becomes so challenging, is how to find that place and how to be in that place of being in charge and making those decisions when you don't feel it.
Well, that's the thing too. Why wouldn't we be alarmed? And so, first of all, call it what it is. Don't call it anxiety. Call it alarmed. I'm alarmed. I don't feel safe. Only the defendant will feel safe right now. So good on you. You feel it. You do it. But that's not the only thing. We feel alarmed, but the fact is we have people to take care of. We have things to do. We have responsibilities. Just live in the middle of that. And that's what courage is about. Courage is not about not being alarmed. We'd be fools not to be alarmed. So it's okay. But we've got things to do, and not letting our alarm get in the way of life. The more we think of who needs us and of what we need to do, that's where our courage comes from. And we find ourselves capable of amazing things. It doesn't mean our alarm goes away. It just means it doesn't run our life. But if we think of ourselves, it just starts getting worse and worse and worse. If to be able to deal with our alarm, we got to think about ourselves as, what does somebody need from us? What does our child need from us? How do I help this individual? And that's where we find the courage to be able to deal with with our alarm in our life.
And a good cry helps. If you
Yeah.
can get to your tears. If you
There
can
is
get
nothing
there.
left to do but cry for a lot of
Yeah.
what alarms us. Yes.
Yeah. And so to find a way to make room, not even make room, but just not to fight those
Yeah.
tears that need to come, and not knowing that they won't swallow you, but they'll be your answer to rest every day. If you can find a way through that, and to find a place where you're just not having to think about solving something or taking care of somebody so directly, finding a time to play with your child where you just can escape into that bubble of a pretend world or your own play world, music, gardening, whatever it is that just takes you away, a walk, being in nature, but just finding some reprieve from those alarming feelings just so you can come up for air for a little bit. And so, because they're
Building daily
exhausting.
rituals around those if you need
Yeah,
to. Even 15
yeah,
minutes would count a lot. Just
yeah.
to have 15 minutes of alarm-free existence, which only comes to us when in an emotional playground. Because when we're in the play drive, it actually puts the alarm system at rest for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we need it as adults as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's something about being in nature that just, brings us where we see that the world goes on around us. The birds are still there, and the otters are still there. This somehow gives us some perspective too. And yeah, I it's not easy. None of this is easy, and there's no easy answers to any of this. But I hopefully you've gotten some pieces that you can hold on to, something that you can take home with you. And just a reminder, we have 5 other recorded sessions. This is our final week of this particular series. But we do have some recordings from previous sessions from before that are on our website. And I think, and Genevieve just put that down for those that are attending here, but it's newfeldinstitute.org. And there's a few other upcoming things that you can be made aware of if you're on our newsletter list. So if you do want to find out about upcoming opportunities, I encourage you to go there